My name is Scott Donovan. I'm here to show you how to grow your business with digital textile printing. I'm a US-based consultant, and that star is about where I call home, Charlotte, North Carolina. And being from the Southeast and the hub of where textiles used to be in the States, I'd like to say buongiorno, y'all. Being from the land where we call polenta grits. The first thing I want to make a point at is textile printing isn't rocket science. If you boil it down into a group of machines, a group of procedures that you follow to get a correct outcome, anybody can do it. So it's just following the procedures and getting your workflows down. And with that being said, we're sitting here, we're talking about the new millennium, the new start of textile printing. We're just on the cusp of it. This was an article in Life magazine in 1947. And it was talking about putting photographs on fabric. And if you read through the article a little bit, they were using positives or negatives depending on what kind of photoresist chemicals they were putting on the fabric at the time. But it talks about putting it on apparel, home deck, posters, and display options. The same things we're talking about today, but that was in 1947. So as you've heard talks today and in the past, folks are breaking the digital textile market down into home deck, apparel, industrial printing. I want to look at it as a different way and give you two brief overviews of some companies. And I call it selling to a lot of chickens or selling to one chicken. So we'll take the example of selling to a lot of chickens at once, and this would be a client that I work with that holds the licensing agreements to print Disney characters on fabric by the yard. This company was a historic cotton printer. And when the textiles left the USA for Asia, they found themselves outsourcing all their material and all their yardage. So they outsource about 5 million yards of fabric a year and have been doing so for about 10 years. They did no production in-house. The CEO of the company knew digital textiles were coming. He embraced the idea. So in March, we plugged in one Momaki TS500. Well, what was happening the previous months before that is they have an end user that buys most of their fabric by the yard, which was all cotton, and I'll get back to the cotton and the polyester differences here. In March, on their website, they had 30,000 hits for a phenomenon in the USA called Frozen. And I don't know if Frozen has hit Europe yet. It's the Disney movie. Anything in the States that has Frozens on it is not on the shelf anymore. People are making frozen products as fast as they can get it to the shelves. So in March, we plugged in the first Momaki TS500 in working in generating their workflows and their procedures and getting their personnel trained. We took that machine and we set it up right in the middle of the office. Well, for these days, where you set up digital printing these days is an office environment. Well, the first order that came along was 1,600 yards. And helping them set this up and their procedures, I figured their first order would be about 50 yards or 100 yards. So they kind of surprised me with the first order being 1,600 yards. Well, that 1,600 yards made it to the end client. It sold out of their stores in 18 hours. So then they got their second order for their frozen merchandise. It was 40,000 yards. So here we are, 40,000 yards. I have one TS500. We have another TS500 that was in the company, brought that up from a couple hours away. So we have two TS500s. We ran them 24 hours a day, 7 days straight. And in 5 weeks, we had 40,000 yards of printed fabric in stores around the country. So the power of digital printing is there. And why I bring this example to light is we are thinking about digital printing as a lot of one-offs and end user, but here's where industrial and true textile printers are starting to embrace digital technology. And this is where we filled a stopgap, because as we got the order, there was orders in line for a couple 100,000 yards of digitally printed cotton to come in overseas that wasn't going to be available to June. So we fulfilled their order on that end, but you can also think of it as a different way. If you have customers that are on the fence about how much to order, they plan on selling 10,000 yards, so they order 10,000, and the item doesn't sell well, so they end up with 5,000 extra sitting on the shelves. Well, with digital printing, you can backfill orders also. So if you're printing conventionally and you're not sure about how the orders are coming, you can also just take digital printing and think about it as filling off on the back end also. So that's selling to a lot of chickens. Mass production for digital printing for 40,000 yards in 5 weeks is pretty good. To date, they're up to about 70,000 yards for the first half a year with their machines in, which is a pretty good start for a brand new printer. Let's see if this is going to hit me here. So my last trip over, I extended the Ghent Inkjet conference, and when I got back home, this was in my, my mailbox with 20 other catalogs that our paperless society is no longer using. But this is a company up the road from Charlotte called Shutterfly, and they are a photo producer. So you go online, traditionally, you upload your photos, they print out individual photos or a photo books for you. Well, you can see here that some of their items that they're getting into is they're getting into some of the home deck areas here. So you see some of the pillows are digitally printed. Some of the wall coverings are digitally printed. They print on metal, which isn't digital textiles, but it uses the same sublimation method that the transfer printing is using. The interesting thing about Shutterfly, and as a digital printer and as a business person in general, last year they had 8 million customers. And that wasn't 8 million individual transactions, that was 8 million individual Tom, Dick, and Harrys, and Janes and Sallys ordered products from their company. So if you think okay, I want to try to capture $10 off 80 million people, it's a pretty good return. But you can see how some of the large customization, personalized companies are getting into digital printing in a large way. And you can see some of the wall coverings here, they're just printed canvas stretched onto a frame. And some of the pillows and the home deck areas here. Shutterfly has a lot of templates set up, so you just drop your pictures in where you can get the monograms and the colors really quick. So as we switch over from selling to many chickens to selling to the one chicken, I don't know if I have the silver bullet for your company, where you're just going to blast out there with $1 million idea, but maybe I can help you understand and think a little bit different on how to use it. The first thing I ran into when I started digital printing was I could print the fabric. It looked really nice. The customers loved it. Okay, what am I going to do with it now? So I had to find ways to finish it. I had to find hardware to put it on. I had to find a cut and sew operation, because if I was doing samples, the customer wanted samples. I know of a couple examples in the States where there's companies that are just handling all the sampling for big major corporations. It's big brands like Carter's Baby Wear, where you're doing 30,000 samples a year. It's all one-off stuff or two-off stuff, but you're doing sampling. But once you get your fabric printed, you have to think of a way of what are you going to do with it next. Another thing is mixing techniques. We all think digital printing, that's the end of it. Okay, we're going to digitally print this fabric, that's it. Well, if you can combine conventional and digital printing, there's another end product you can use. I've seen folks that are doing displays, they'll print the image, digitally print it, and if they need a metallic, a silver or gold on top of it to make a logo or a technique come out, they'll take it to a conventional flat screen printer and screen print that effect on it. This is an example of a placemat that's been digitally printed, and around the colors here has been embroidered. So it gives it a little extra dimension, a little bit different look, a little bit higher end. To speak to the designers that are in the audience today, my wife keeps telling me that dark blue is the new black. I don't know, we're just going with that. Is to take something old and refresh it and bring it to life again. These patterns right here are from the 1960s, but you can see there's motifs in there that today's designers can use. And these motifs have been used for years and years and years over textile design. These designs here, if down here in the corners of them, you can see dates like 1913, was it 1915, 1914? Who knew that people back then wore colors? Because every picture I've seen of them, it's all black and white. But if you dig through some of these archives, you'll see the colors that people were wearing back then and what was in vogue and what was in fashion. So it's the idea of taking motifs like this and using them, rescaling them, recoloring them, putting them into something more than a 25-inch repeat to come up with a digital fabric that can be used, that uses digital printing to its fullest extent these days. And again, you can see some of the colors here that they were wearing back at the turn of the century. And again, that's kind of a black and white era for me, is I just didn't know that, or didn't realize that folks were wearing colors back then. Another point I'd like to make is sustainability. Find a way to be sustainable. If your product is not sustainable as it comes through your shop or comes through your business or goes out to the customer, I've set up systems where we sold 35,000 banners to Walmart, and there was a system, a closed loop system in place where there's 35,000 banners could come back through a simple parcel system, and that those banners were upcycled into bags or wallets or other items that continue the life of the product. In the States, Unify is using a lot of recycled yarn now, so we're seeing a lot more different fabrics made out of recycled polyester, where when they were starting that about 7 years ago, you'd get some fabric in the shop, and you'd look at it and have a red streak that would shoot up through it, and you're like, oh, another defect. And you roll out a few yards, there'd be a green streak running through it, and what it was the caps to the water bottles were in the process. And they've gotten better with revenue streams to get those out, so now the fabrics are a lot cleaner. There's a lot different shapes and sizes of yarns being used. So as you're thinking your way through digital print processes, and we've heard about ways in the manufacturing processes of how to be sustainable, you can also take that to the end product too and just bring them back through and upcycle them. And one last thought that I would like to leave with you, and I've picked this up from other industries, is collaborate with each other. I cut my teeth in the commercial printing world, very cutthroat. You didn't tell the printer next door who your customer was, who your paper supplier was, how you were printing it. You kept all your people really close. Your best pressman was your best friend. Other new emerging industries out there collaborate with each other. Don't be scared to talk to somebody about an idea you have. I used to think, well, if I talk to him about that idea, he's going to steal it. Well, if someone's going to steal your idea and you didn't get to market fast enough, you really kind of weren't behind it in the first place. So collaborate with each other. Talk to your suppliers. Talk to your customers. Talk to their clients if you can. Talk to other printers. Digital printing, as we heard earlier this morning, is about 2.7% of the total print market. Just think if we could all collaborate and share ideas, if we could double that to 5-6% of the market, think of how much business you would have. Think Andreas would have twice as much business. He'd be doing 2 balloons. We'd be doing 80,000 yards of fabric at a time. So that's one last thought that I wanted to leave with y'all, was to just collaborate, be open. You're at this FESPA event, which shows everybody's taken the first step towards that. So I want to thank you for your time.